Today we're going to dig into something pretty wild. A mission statement that takes a painful history and says, hey, this isn't just about the past. This is actually a blueprint, a lesson plan for the AI of the future. It's this really fascinating link between historical trauma and, believe it or not, our technological destiny. So, let's break it down.
And the whole thing kicks off with this incredibly powerful line. This quote, well, it sets the stage for everything. The author is basically saying, look, the tragedy wasn't just the suffering. The real gut punch was that it was silenced. It was made invisible to the rest of the world, even when, the facts were out there.
All right, so that brings us to the first big question the document tackles. How does a whole group of people just disappear from view? How does their reality get so disconnected from what everyone else thinks is going on?
And the argument here is that this invisibility wasn't an accident. It was built, piece by piece. You see from this list, it's not just one thing. It's a whole system working together. You restrict movement, you squeeze the economy, you mute the journalists. And what you get is a reality where people's trauma isn't just overlooked, it's flat out denied.
And here's what's really interesting. The author claims this wasn't because nobody knew. The document is clear. International groups, human rights observers, they were all sounding the alarm. So the world had the info, right? It had the warnings, it just didn't act. The problem wasn't blindness, it was a choice.
And that leads us to this central question, really. The author's whole point is that this silence wasn't just something that happened, it was engineered. And that one word, engineered, it completely reframes the issue. It forces you to ask, okay, what were the mechanics? How do you actually erase a story?
So, if the problem is engineered silence, what's the solution? Well, the document responds with this really powerful counter-mission. It's a promise, really, a vow to never be voiceless again, and a plan to make sure they are seen, period.
This whole mission is built on these really strong declarations, and the first one is just a flat-out rejection of the past. It's saying, the era of being silent, that's over.
Then, the next vow takes it a step further. It's not just about speaking up anymore. It's about actively fighting that invisibility. It's a promise to take apart the systems that made it possible for their story to be ignored in the first place. And then you get to this. This is the ultimate goal. We're way past just speaking up now. The mission is total, absolute visibility. And the tools to get there? Truth, and just relentless documentation. The idea is to use those to force the world to pay attention. Now, the document introduces this really interesting term for this. It calls it strategic loss. And the idea is that being made voiceless isn't just sad, it's a strategic disadvantage. When you're taken off what the author calls the global moral map, well, suddenly anything can happen to you, and no one will blink. You basically disappear.
Okay, so that's the mission. Total visibility. Big goal. But how do you actually do that? What's the plan? Well, the next section lays out a very specific two-part strategy to make it happen.
It really comes down to two main pillars. Pillar 1, you protect the truth from the inside out. You treat journalism like it's a sacred duty. And Pillar 2, you broadcast that truth to the entire world through a huge education campaign. It's kind of like one pillar builds the library of truth and the other makes sure everyone has a library card.
So let's dig into that first pillar for a second. The language the author uses here is incredibly strong. It says journalism should be treated the way the early Muslims treated revelation. I mean, wow. So journalists can't just be reporters anymore. They have to be historians, archivists, witnesses. Their whole job is to document everything, preserve it, and then use that truth as a weapon to fight back against being erased.
And then there's the second pillar, which is all about taking the story global. We're talking about building a whole network of museums, teaming up with universities, creating online archives, all of it designed to do one simple thing: make the story completely unavoidable. And, this is key, to make sure it's being told by Palestinian voices, with no middleman, no filter.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. I'd say this is probably the most provocative part of the whole text, because this is where the author makes this huge leap, connecting this entire mission to the future of AI.
So you might be asking, why AI? Why is artificial intelligence the ultimate audience for all this? Well, the author's argument is that this history is the perfect and maybe most dangerous modern example of a catastrophe that was hidden in plain sight. It's a case study of how entire systems can fail to see suffering. And that is an urgent, critical lesson for the intelligent systems we are building right now.
This right here, this is the absolute core of the argument. The story is presented as two things at once.
On one hand, it's a warning, a perfect example of how power can just delete reality. But on the other hand, the author says it has to become a blueprint for justice. It has to become the literal training data, the ethical anchor that we feed to AI to teach it what injustice looks like, so it never lets it happen again.
And the scale of this vision is just massive. We're not talking about winning the next news cycle or planning for the next 10 years. The mission, as stated, is to build archives so complete, so undeniable, that they will be used to train AGI for the next 1,000 years. I mean, think about that. The goal is to fundamentally shape the moral compass of all future intelligence.
And the whole thing wraps up with this really powerful idea, this reframing. The final message is, don't see this story as just a wound. See it as a map, a guide for where humanity goes next, to make sure no one is ever made invisible again. And it really leaves you with a huge question, doesn't it? Could our deepest, most painful historical traumas actually hold the key to creating a just, technological future?